Let's set the scene. We've got this prophet, Lehi, and he's received a pretty intense message of prophecy from God about what's going to happen to his family.
This isn't your typical you will meet a tall, dark stranger kind of prophecy either. This is the kind that turns your whole life upside down. God's telling Lehi it's time to pack up, head into the wilderness, and basically start over.
Talk about a life change, and it gets even more intense. His sons, that's Laman, Lemuel, Sam, and Nephi, they're told to hightail it back to Jerusalem and find wives.
The catch, they've got to find women who are open to Lehi's message too. Imagine trying to convince someone to leave their comfortable life for the unknown wilderness. Talk about a tough sell.
Right. That takes some serious trust. It makes you wonder where and when this is all happening.
It's fascinating. The text doesn't actually say. It's like this story could be happening anywhere, anytime. Adds a whole other layer to it.
Totally. Okay, back to those sons. Turns out, not all of them were jazzed about this whole wilderness adventure.
That's putting it mildly, Laman and Lemuel. Let's just say they weren't exactly thrilled. They had serious doubts about their dad's whole prophet thing, which honestly is surprising considering all the stuff they'd already seen.
Seriously, you think they'd be used to God, talking to their dad by now? And it gets more complicated because some of the people who came with them, Ishmael's family, they started getting cold feet too, missing that Jerusalem life.
Yeah, their rebellion, it really makes you think about human nature, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's easy to talk about faith, but what happens when it's put to the test? When we're asked to step outside our comfort zones and embrace the unknown, that's when things get really interesting.
That's when we see what they're really made of, right? Now, their brother Nephi, he's a different story. He's desperately trying to get through to his brothers, reminding them of all those miracles they witnessed firsthand.
And he really lays it on thick. He talks about how they got those sacred scriptures they carried, which we know wasn't easy, and how they escaped all that danger back in Jerusalem.
All because they listened to what God told them to do.
Right.
Bingo.
It's like Nephi saying, hey guys, remember that whole almost getting killed thing? Yeah, divine intervention saved us then. Maybe, just maybe, we should trust it again.
You'd think that would be enough to convince them. But he doesn't stop there, does he? Nephi goes further than just reminding them of the past. He actually warns them about what'll happen if they turn their backs on this plan of God's.
And this is where it gets really interesting. He doesn't just say God will be mad, He brings up the prophecies about Jerusalem's destruction. Going back would be like running headfirst into a disaster.
It's like choosing between what's comfortable and familiar versus taking a leap of faith into the unknown.
And that struggle, that's something we can all relate to, right? How often do we let fear of the unknown hold us back from something potentially amazing? I know I have.
All the time. Fear is powerful. But in this story, it escalates, doesn't it? Their defiance, their anger, it boils over. They actually tie Nephi up. Sibling rivalry taken to a whole new level.
It's intense, and you have to wonder, what pushes people to that extreme? They were so blinded by their own anger, their resentment, that they turned against their own brother, someone who genuinely cares about them.
It really shows how quickly things can spin out of control when emotions run high. So, what happens next? We'll find out in the next part of our deep dive. So last we saw Nephi, he was tied up by his own brothers. Talk about a tense situation. It's kind of heartbreaking, really. They're so caught up in their own doubts and fears, they turn against their own flesh and blood.
It really highlights the destructive nature of fear and resentment, doesn't it? And how easily those emotions can turn us against even those closest to us.
It's scary how quickly things can escalate. But what happens next? We've got Nephi, bound and helpless. What can he possibly do in that situation?
Well, that's the amazing part. Instead of panicking, instead of giving in to despair, Nephi turns to his faith. Right there, tied up, he prays for strength.
Wow, can you imagine in that moment of utter vulnerability, he reaches out to something bigger than himself? Talk about courage under pressure.
It's a really powerful moment in the text. And he doesn't just pray to be rescued. He specifically asks God for the strength to break free from those bonds himself.
He's not passive in this situation. He's actively seeking a way out, but not just any way out. He's seeking a way out through his faith.
And that's a powerful message for all of us, isn't it? That even when we feel trapped by our circumstances, by the negativity of others, we always have the power to choose how we respond.
It's a good reminder to hold on to, especially when things get rough. But this is where things get even more interesting.
Because
the cords binding Nephi, they just fall away.
Just like that. Divine intervention at its finest.
I get chills every time I read that part. It's such a vivid image of breaking free from the things that hold us back.
And it's not just a physical breaking free, is it? It's about breaking free from doubt, from fear, from all those negative emotions that can keep us tied down.
So the cords are gone, Nephi's free. You'd think his brothers would be stunned into silence, maybe even a little bit afraid. They just witnessed a miracle.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But no, their initial reaction is, well, let's just say it's not exactly what you'd expect.
So they're still stuck in that anger and resentment, even after seeing something so incredible.
It seems like it. It's a good reminder that sometimes even witnessing the extraordinary isn't enough to change someone's heart right away. Some wounds run deep. But thankfully, the brothers aren't the only ones present for this little miracle.
Here come the voices of reason, right?
You'd think. Actually, it's the women in the group who step forward, Ishmael's daughters and their mother. They see the injustice of what just happened. They see Nephi's goodness and his brother's cruelty, and they refuse to stay silent.
It's so important to have those voices. Those who are willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult, especially within a family.
Absolutely. And their words have an impact. They appeal to the brothers' humanity. They remind them of the bonds of family, of the importance of compassion, especially in the face of conflict.
And finally, it seems like the message gets through. The brothers are overcome with remorse. It's like the weight of what they've done, what they almost did, comes crashing down on them.
It's a powerful depiction of repentance, isn't it? That raw, emotional realization of the consequences of our actions.
It makes you wonder, though, how often do we let those moments pass us by? How often do we miss the opportunity to make things right?
It's definitely something to think about. But there's one more detail in this story that I find particularly striking. It's Nephi's response to his brother's change of heart.
Does he launch into a lecture about how wrong they were?
Not quite. He does the exact opposite. He forgives them immediately and completely.
Wow. Just like that, he lets go of all that anger and resentment?
It seems so. It's forgiveness in its purest form, don't you think? No strings attached, no lingering bitterness, just a genuine desire to move forward in unity.
That's a tough act to follow. But it's incredibly inspiring, too. It makes you realize how much we could accomplish, how much healing could happen if we could embrace forgiveness as readily as Nephi did.
It's a powerful message, and one that's more relevant now than ever, don't you think? But this story isn't over just yet.
Oh, there's more. What happens next?
Well, they don't just, dust themselves off and pretend nothing happened. There's this really interesting detail the text emphasizes.
Okay, now you've got me curious. What is it? What happens?
They go back to Lehi's camp, and the first thing they do, offer thanks and sacrifices to God.
It's like a powerful statement, isn't it? A public declaration that they're starting over. After everything that went down, they're acknowledging a power greater than themselves, greater than their anger, even greater than their fear.
Absolutely. They're acknowledging that they didn't come out of that experience unscathed, and they certainly didn't do it on their own. There's humility there, a recognition that they messed up, that they needed help.
And a deep sense of gratitude for a second chance. I mean, they could have destroyed their whole family, their entire future.
No doubt. So this act of offering thanks and sacrifice, it's like hitting the reset button. It's a powerful symbol of their recommitment to their faith, to each other, to the journey ahead.
Wow. Talk about a story with it all. Adventure, family drama, miracles. It's got everything. But you know what really stays with me? It's those quieter moments, those reflections on faith, on forgiveness, on the strength of family. Those really hit home.
Those are the things that make you think. And it really makes you wonder, how would I respond to a test of faith like that? Would I be like Nephi? Would I hold on to hope and choose forgiveness even after being hurt, even after being betrayed?
Or would I let those negative emotions get the better of me? Would I let anger and resentment win? It's something we all face at some point, isn't it?
In a way, I think we all go through our own versions of this story. We all face those crossroads where we have to choose. Choose between bitterness and forgiveness, between holding on and letting go.
It's a powerful reminder that it's in those choices and those moments when we're pushed to our limits that we discover who we really are.
Well, that was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing this journey with me and for sharing your insights. I always learn so much from our deep dives.
The pleasure was all mine. These stories, these conversations, they're just as important for me as they are for anyone listening. They remind us of the bigger picture, the things that truly matter.
That's what it's all about, right? To all our deep divers out there, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. We hope this story has given you something to think about, something to hold on to. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.